We now move on to our final panel discussion of Communique 12. Access to formal financial services has been limited to many, if not most, of the world's poorest. More than 2.5 billion people do not use formal financial services. The use of mobile telephones to deliver basic financial services to the financially excluded poor represents an unprecedented opportunity. However, for mobile financial services to achieve their true potential for financial inclusion, they must become available on a much larger scale and include a wider portfolio of services, most notably the facilitation of savings. There is need for governments and multilateral institutions to work in concert with the private sector to address market frictions and institutional needs. It is in this spirit that we would like to introduce the topic for the final panel discussion of Communique 12, Mobilizing Financial Inclusion, Embracing the Bottom of Pyramid through Collaborative Initiatives.
To guide and channelize the discussion, I would like to call onto the dais the moderator, Mr. Piyush Vaish, partner, KPMG. Sir has over 14 years of extensive process and risk consulting experience in the telecommunications sector. He has led several large and complex telecom projects relating to internal audits, revenue assurance, process improvements, and assistance in developing standard operating procedures. Sir has worked closely with the service-based operators in evaluating the design and risks underlying their businesses. Sir is a certified chartered accountant and has a Bachelor of Commerce degree from the Sri Ram College of Commerce. SITM welcomes you, sir, to Communique 12.
Our next distinguished panelist is Mr. Vicky Rodrigues, Head Technology and M-Commerce, Vodafone. Mr. Rodrigues is a seasoned professional with over 15 years of hands-on experience of working with cross-border teams in driving initiatives and products. In India, Sir has been actively involved in telecom, payments, broadband, and wireless internet space. Some of his notable achievements are being part of the core team that set up India's first ISP BSNL, helping set up one of the earliest mobile portals for Hutchison, and launching of India's joint telco bank mobile money offering M-Pesa with HDFC Bank. Sir is currently working on mobile-based microfinance services and wallet products jointly with banking institutions and next-generation payment platforms based on NFC and RFID SIM. SITM welcomes you, sir, to Communique 12.
Our next panelist is Dr. Sanjay Bhatia, Director, Amdocs India. Sir has over 20 years of experience playing leading roles across the value chain of IT and communication business, including areas of enterprise-wide systems, manufacturing, finance, hospitality, and education industry. He has played various leading roles in areas of competence solution offering, strategic planning, outsourcing engagement, system integration, and consulting. Working with Amdocs since 1999, Sir is currently part of India Delivery Management Team, responsible for cross-delivery strategic portfolio. Dr. Bhatia holds a PhD in Business Management, an MBA degree in IT Management, and EDI, a professional diploma in EDI from Deakin University, Australia, and also a Bachelor of Sciences degree from Delhi University. Sir, SITM welcomes you to Communique 12.
Our next distinguished panelist is Mr. Ravindra Deshmukh, Managing Director, UPass. Mr. Deshmukh has 38 years of cross-vertical management experience spanning banking and finance, electronic media, IT-enabled services, convergence, and mobile technology. Mr. Deshmukh is the Managing Director of the UPass Group that specializes in mobile technology platforms, facilitating off-site data capture, processing, and management in real time, through client-server architecture covering both financial and non-financial transactions. In a short span of 3 years, UPass has spread across India and caters to clients from banking, telecom, cable TV, custody and logistics, and CMFI space. Sir, we welcome you to Communique 12.
I would now like to call upon Mr. Debashish Chatterjee, Chief Executive Officer, NetExcel. Professional, leader, and challenge seeker best describe the journey of Mr. Debashish Chatterjee over the last 21 years of his working life. His company, NetExcel, provides various voice and data services, mainly customer lifecycle management service to major telecom operators in India, managing a subscriber base of more than 500 million. Under his leadership, NetExcel has started its operations in Africa through NetExcel Mauritius Limited. His emphasis on intellectual property rights helped NetExcel file several products, services for patent, service mark, and copyright. Sir has been a speaker in many national and international telecom conferences, engineering colleges, and management institutes. He is a doctorate in science with AMP from IIM Bangalore and holds a diploma in patent law from Nalsar. Sir, we welcome you to Communicate 12.
Next, I would like to call on stage Mr. J.G. Parmar, Assistant General Manager, Canara Bank. Sir has over 35 years of rich experience in various fields of banking. He specializes in HR, credit, audit, and administration in circle offices. Sir has multiple qualifications like MCOM and CAIIB. We welcome you, sir, to Communicate 12.
Our next distinguished panelist is Mr. Chintan Soni, co-founder and director at Equilibrium Energy Private Limited. Sir has over 12 years of experience in the telecom and banking domain, having undertaken assignments in the areas of business development, product marketing, program management, and systems integration. Mr. Soni was the marketing manager, telecom, Gemalto, and later worked at Pine Labs Private Limited as the AVP Business Development, where his objective was to identify and set up a business unit addressing telecom and banking convergence. Sir is our very own alumnus, having graduated in 1998, thus being a member of the first batch of SITM. Sir, SITM welcomes you to Communicate 12.
I now request our moderator, Mr. Piyush Vaish, to initiate the panel discussion. Yes.
Thanks. All right, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to come over here. I know it's the last session, Saturday evening, not one of the best things to stay around the professors and the college. But anyway, I think I'll try and make it as interesting as possible, make it as intellectual as possible, and see how best we can get out of it. So I think the first thing that's probably just to energize everybody, can I request everybody to please stand up for a second? Can I please request? So I think we'll get some energy moving, and if anybody is sleeping, we'll really catch hold of the guy. Good. That's fantastic. Okay. Now, can I request everybody who's actually never ever owned a Nokia phone to sit down? Who's actually never ever owned a Nokia phone to sit down? Okay, very few people who will sit down. Okay, can I request all those people who actually now don't own a Nokia phone to sit down? All right. Okay, I think the message is loud and clear. I think all of you can sit down. I think the message is clear that the whole telecom sector is obviously moving towards competition. There's absolutely a lot of innovation that's happening. There are a whole lot of things that have happened. In the last 10 years that we've seen in the Indian telecom space, there's been so much of movement all around the place as is possible today. So I think obviously financial inclusion is a topic that some of us really believe. I don't know, you really don't know when this is going to happen in this country. Are we really heading into the really heading into the right direction? Do we think that this is going to happen in the near future, over the next 10 years, 15 years, when this banking space is already developed in this market? The rural areas continues to be rural, and so on and so forth. I've got some, one of the intellectual panel members actually gave me some stats in the morning saying that 55% of the population still actually has bank accounts in India. There are roughly around 150 million households which still remain unbanked in this country, and so on and so forth. 6 lakh villages, 34,000, 35,000 branches. So there's a whole lot of Pandora stuff saying that right now we're obviously unbanked. The whole setup really needs a kind of a revamp. What is the government doing? How does the telecom business help them? How does the technology provider help each one of us? So I think there is a whole lot of gamut of yes and no that's happening, question marks that are developing. So I think I'll probably open up this to each and every individual here to at least, the first thing to figure out is it really an obligation on the part of the government or the regulator, or is there real opportunity both for the banking institutions and the private sector to really bring in financial inclusion? And probably, and I'm going to start that with the bankers here first, because, I always make sure that the bankers are absolutely on my right side while he's sitting on the left. So first I'll start with you, Mr. Parmar. Do you really think there is enough, is there an obligation on your behalf as a Canara Bank GM, or is there really the government or the private holders? Is there an obligation for each one of us to make sure that we're really going in the right space?
See, we talk about the mobile financial inclusion. But if in this country, if you go to the remotest part of the various places, see, I give one example in the last week. As a part of my branch visit, I had gone to a place in Silvassa. It's called very small village, where even the children in the school, I found they go barefooted, and they had to walk about 4 to 5 kilometers. This is the situation. The government of India of late thought of financial inclusion of these remotest villages, families, and they have now given a slogan of one family, one account. So I think definitely it is the need of the hour that these remotest families who are not the beneficiaries of the urbanizations of the latest technologies need to be brought under the fold of this banking first, and then definitely mobile banking.
Sure. So I think obviously that's clear that obviously the government and everybody needs to really push it hard to make that happen. I'll go down to Vicky. Vicky, you come from a Vodafone background, clearly a guy who's sitting from an operator perspective. Does your company really see it as an opportunity, or are you saying, oh man, we still have to do another thing, as if the government has been really pushing you hard to do a lot of stuff otherwise as well?
So we have a benefit of actually having launched a service in other markets. We've got a very large mobile banking / mobile money transfer service running in Africa, in Kenya, in Tanzania, in South Africa. So we've seen real benefits that accrue to private sector companies like telecom operators by having financial services offered through our network itself. So for us, it's actually a core belief, so much so that we've invested and we are continuing to invest to bring in a platform which is specific to India and cater to Indian customer needs. So yes, there's an opportunity. Is it a opportunity that can mature in the next 2-3 years? No, we think it's going to be a long-term opportunity. You're going to have to develop this because there's a fair bit of banking that already exists in India. Customers in India are very careful and wary about who they trust. So from that aspect, we see this to be a gradual process. But yes, there's a benefit both to the Indian public as well as to private sector. Whoever is investing in this, yes, there is a definite opportunity, and we definitely want to see ourselves do something in this space right now.
All right, so I think we've got a very clear mandate, both from the bankers and from the operators. Clear opportunity, clearly something that's to be done. I know that Sanjay is really itching to come in, but I'm going to get Debashish in first to really figure out, Debashish, how big is this opportunity? I mean, how deep are we really into the financial inclusion, financial operations space as of now, both in the rural and in the urban comparison? And, I've known you, and you've been a guy who's always thrown numbers around. So what is your sense of the size of this whole thing today?
Hello. In one sentence, quote unquote, the opportunity is huge. Why? Because as on today, you have about 400 million people in the rural sector who are earning less than $1 per day, per capita income. In the next 8 years, they are moving to the next bracket, which is $1 to $5 income per day, which will be a movement of 150 million people. So therefore, the opportunity is huge. Number two, what is happening today? Of course, people are not banked, but financial transaction is already happening. Just to give you a figure, because I'm sorry to give figure, but if I don't give the figure, the perspective will not be correct. As per the CMI data, in the last 1 year, the rural India has done a total transaction of 3.55 lakh crore of rupees vis-a-vis the urban India, which has done 2.99 lakh crore of rupees. So there are already, apart from the main PSUs, there are regional and rural banks, there are what we call microfinance institutions, post offices. There are a variety of chains are already existing, but we need to upgrade the system, and there lies the possibility.
Sure. So I think obviously numbers, and I'm going to hear some more numbers from you as we go along in this discussion, Devashish. So I think now I'll come down to Chintan. Chintan, how do you think this market, and first of all, obviously, I think Chintan is most comfortable here being an alumni of this esteemed organization. So Chintan, how do you see this happening in the near future? I mean, what is your sense? Where is it actually heading at this point of time?
So I'll give you a perspective of what we did in my previous organization when I was with Pine Labs. We developed a small payphone kind of a device which was loaded with a lot of applications where people could buy mobile, recharge coupons, do railway ticketing. When we first rolled out one of those devices, and of course the objective was to launch this device in rural markets first. And when we started rolling out, the first month, some of the merchants did 5,000 word transaction. And 6 months down the line, we saw that transactions worth 75,000 rupees per day started happening. It just shows that the need to have a financial transaction, whether it be buying a railway ticket, movie ticket, pay phone bills, recharge coupons, is there. It's just a matter of handing that device to the consumer's hand. I'm not saying it can happen tomorrow. As Vicky said, it could maybe 2 years, 3 years down the line, but yes, opportunity is absolutely there.
Fantastic. Okay, Sanjay, now I'm going to come to you, and then I'm going to probably open up the panel after I have a question specifically for Ravinder after this. How does the connect between today and the future happen? We talk about the fact that, I'm into an era where I can just flip around and watch a television movie going. You've got iPads on the table. You've got a whole lot of things. But here we're talking about financial inclusion from a rural perspective. So how do you see the today and the future going and blending it together to make sure it happens? We can talk in these fancy auditoriums. We can talk about happening. How does it really get to the grassroots? Do you see that happening in the next 5 years, 10 years down the road?
I think I need to make the panel maybe excused from this exercise. But I think there were a lot of you who were there yesterday, right? And we live in the world of extreme realities, right? Yesterday, almost same time, same place. Anshu was talking about all the gazimos. How many of you were there? Everybody, right? Yes, everybody was there, right? And he was talking about touch of the button, alerts, and the nice lady. You remember? The future being available in a way of comfort at the speed of thought, right? And here we are talking about the extreme end. And I really want to applaud the young audience who asked her the question. This is what you show us, but where is the reality? Is she there today? By any chance? She asked a question yesterday regarding rural India. And I think when we talk about diversity of life, this is what it brings us. From the world of Tom Cruise, the James Bond, the Star Trek, to the reality of life, which is really about including the poorest of the poor. According to the Wikipedia, the wishes talk about it. There are 2.5 billion people who earn less than $1 all over the world. And when you think about the whole, process about it, their lives have been untouched by the technology, advancement, everything that basically has been happening around us. By the way, it'll be interesting for you to note that the term called bottom of the pyramid, which I think is the essence of this session, actually was coined by the US President Roosevelt. He talked about it in 1932, and the title of his speech was The Forgotten Man. And when we look at the inclusiveness, we are basically talking about this forgotten man who, in the ambit of all the advancement that happens around, is completely untouched and is not part of the mainstream. When you look at the opportunities that exist for all of us, they probably balance out on the other side. What's basically happened in terms of the ecosystem that has basically involved around the mutual, let's say, parlance of technology, banking, etc., that we have a big glob web, right? So we have the regulations, we have the banking institutions, we have a host of other bodies that are giving that part of the service to their end customers. And yet, if you remember the movie, the forgotten man doesn't get the money. He doesn't get any empowerment in terms of the activities that the government and other agencies talk about. And third is most important, if you remember the movie, where is my Bawdi? And everybody is trying to find the Bawdi, which doesn't exist. So in terms of reach, connect, the motive itself, everything is lost in this glob web, and he doesn't get anything at the end. So I think if we were to talk about the essence of mobile, or let's say the inclusiveness, is basically about this forgotten man. And if you look at a mind map around all this glob web that basically exists, the ICT is kind of a horizontal layer, which is basically the enablement in order to get to this reach, motive, and value proposition for this forgotten man. So there's a big opportunity.
Fantastic. So I think we'll keep hearing some more stories from you, Sanjay. Mr. Deshmukh, do you think we're heading in the right direction when it comes to financial inclusion? You've been a vocal guy always on this topic. Do you think we're heading in the right direction? Have we made enough progress in the past 10 years? And, obviously we can absolutely debate about the challenges, the regulations, the fungibility between the operators and the bankers. I can always see that, you're always sitting there in between the banker and the operator. I don't know by design or by choice. But what do you think? Have we done enough today?
Yeah, I think first of all, with apologies to people on my left and right, who also happen to be my customers, I think there has been a classic mix-up in the whole financial inclusion space. It is being taken as an extension of banking services. And we are forgetting the fact that banks only play a fractional role in the money movement in this country. You receive a salary, you receive your disbursal, then you draw the money and you do substantial part of retail payment in cash. If the focus moves out from banking transfers and moves into the retail payments happening through mobile, life will be easy for the operators because they come out of, easy for bankers because they come out of regulations, and because the old hierarchy of customer identification doesn't work in sync on both the sides. In a bank operates through a physical premises, so the customer is happy to submit his form there. But if I go to a mobile shop, it's always sold to retailers where I take my SIM. So people are afraid to give the form because they will be worried that the mobile money account they will open in, 10 people will open in their name and they will never know about it because it's attached to a separate SIM. So I'm afraid that the real purpose has been lost in the regulations. It's been lost in the idea of increasing revenue or fulfilling social obligations. We need to look at the business in a totally fresh manner, saying that there is a cost of doing business and there is a risk of doing business with strangers in terms of cash and collections. If these two can be mitigated through electronic and mobile payments, and the benefit of savings and eliminating risk be passed on to the consumer, then the business will fly. As long as we want to replicate the banking business on the mobile screen, I'm afraid it's going to take too many years or decades for it to materialize.
Okay, so I think he's got a clear stand on it that he doesn't want the bankers to interfere in this whole game and let the mobile operators run it. So I'm going to actually come down to that topic, and that's a very interesting topic, and I'll get some of the panelists here on the discussion on what are some of the models that have been running across the world, and do we have a resemblance to some of the models here? But I think the first thing that I want to understand, and it's open to the panelists to decide who wants to go in first, is why is it not working in India? I mean, what is it that's lacking in India? Is there actually real money in the game, both from an operator perspective, from a banker perspective? I don't know what are the costs today of transactions from a banking sector perspective. Do you think the cost of the banks are going to go down? Do you think operators are going to make money? Do you think technology partners are going to make money? Or we're still saying that it's like the rural India where I'm going to get a 40 rupee APU. I don't want to invest. The government's only pumping me through it. So probably, Debashish, why don't you come in and again give us some numbers? Every time I see you, I'm always fond of this numbers. And I think, where do you think, do we really believe that there is a game for everybody? Because at the end of the day, it has to be a profitable game. We're not in the business of doing charity all around. So is there a profitable game both for the private operators, for the bankers? As banks get autonomy, they obviously want money on the table.
Yes, my answer is a resounding yes, but we need to deep dive. We need to deep dive because this is not just one banker and one operator. There are several other players in this whole ecosystem. As I said, that there are microfinance institutions, regional rural banks, and there are various other fellows. So you need to put a line through all these dots. And the biggest problem in this game is that, as somebody said already, that who owns the customer? And that's a real problem. Because operator is touching the actual customer with his SIM card. He is his customer. The brand is in his hand. Whereas the money is coming from the bank, because as on today, no operator can exist by institutionalizing a separate kind of monetary channel. From some channel, the money must flow in, and then it can be distributed. So that still remains with the bank, and it is going to remain there. Because there are many regulatory aspects, there are security aspects, there are many other aspects into it. So the problem is really very complex.
Mr. Parmar, what do you think from a bank? Do you think there are cost issues? Do you think there are revenue issues in this model? Or do you think there are going to be costs that will come down if we actually go all out to make sure this happens?
Yeah, that's one thing is very clear. Technology brings down the cost. And as far as this mobile banking is concerned, there is no cost involved to the bank, and bank makes it free to the customers. So suppose we have to make any arrangement with any operator, there will not be any cost involved, which is the...
So what's holding it back for banks like Canara Bank to really get into the game in a big manner?
See, my own perception says that by and large, even in the metros and urban areas, even amongst the literates, I think the awareness is lacking so much that the usage of the mobile banking or even internet banking is still at its barest minimum level. It has not gained to the extent the technology has been popularized in our country. So I think it is perhaps the need of the hour, and it is the duty of both the bankers as well as the techno companies that awareness has to be created amongst these customers, and at least we are doing it. We are, I tell you one example, as a clarion call of our chairman and managing director, we undertook one campaign at least to register all our employees under the mobile banking, because we had launched mobile banking, but somehow it had not gained the required customers. So first we decided to popularize it amongst our employees. And then through these employees, we thought we can go to the customers so that the employees can demonstrate how it can be used. I think this is the best way we can do it.
Okay, so I think we're very clearly getting down to, there are some software issues involved. Awareness is an issue, KYC is an issue. Now, before I get into the models that are going in the Indian environment, I just wanted to probably touch upon two people. One is Chintan and Vicky. Chintan, I believe, you stayed overseas for a long time, 3 years in Philippines, a couple of years in the Southeast Asian region. How do you see some of these products? And I'm sure you would have used some of these products real time, and so I want those live experiences. How do you see some of the products that have evolved in the global market, and what ease do they bring to the customer vis-a-vis, the way we operate in India? And maybe you can give us some real live examples.
Sure. So I lived in Philippines for 3 years. I lived in Paris for 3 years. Fortunately, unfortunately, coincidentally, whatever you call it, I had a Filipino maid at both locations. Right? I never paid my maid in Philippines using cash or check. It was a transfer from one mobile, which is my mobile, to her mobile. And it was as easy as just 2 minutes. Right? The help that we had in Paris was a Filipino, and every time I would have to pay her, I would pay her a check for 50% of her salary, and the other 50% I would transfer money from her mobile to her mother's mobile in Philippines. Now imagine the number of overseas workers there are in India who are transferring money to India. Amount of money that flows into India, if that can be channelized through the electronic medium or a mobile phone, that's going to be fabulous. Transferring money to India through Western Union is not possible. Right? However, there were mobile phone stores of Smart, which is a mobile operator in Philippines, in Paris. So if I were to transfer money to someone in Philippines, I would go to a Smart mobile shop in Paris, give him cash, that money gets transferred to Philippines, touch of a mobile. I know it's far in India, but these are the things that can happen. And this is the opportunity that we should be looking at. Imagine the number of people people from Bihar working in Mumbai, or Gujaratis working anywhere else. There's a lot of money transfer that is happening in India itself. And if that can be through a mobile phone, why would you need to go to a bank branch at all? Or a post office?
I think the Indian environment, we're actually still struggling to find a mate for ourselves, so banking is a little far away. But having said that, I think the other product that's really gained popularity in the world is obviously M-Pesa, and I'm sure each one of us has read the story about it. And obviously Safaricom in Kenya, which is a Vodafone entity, is obviously, and my understanding of that is that virtually 10% of the GDP in Kenya actually runs on M-Pesa. And I've seen it myself because I usually travel quite a lot to Kenya, and I've seen it that in the night, when you travel by a Mataku, which is the local transport system there, you actually pay by M-Pesa rather than cash because the cash will get dwindled away. So I think, Vicky, my point is, we all understand M-Pesa, we all understand the model that's come up in Tanzania on Vodafone. Why is Vodafone not really pushing it hard after the success of the two products in the African market? I mean, how different is the African market from the Indian market?
I think there are some differences between the African market and the ecosystem that exists there and the Indian market. Obviously, regulation is a critical factor. In case of Africa, I think the service like M-Pesa took off much before regulation came through. They had, within a short span of time, signed up something close to 7.5 to 8 million customers. And that's when the regulator realized, hey, this is something that's going to change the way banking is done in this country. And then when they started putting a lot of rules and limits around the whole thing itself. In India, we have a very stable and a strong regulator. Thanks to that, because that's the reason we've prevented from a lot of the bad ills from the global economy coming to India. So there has been a guideline and a regulation around mobile money and around prepaid wallets much before even we brought the service in India. And that today restricts the ability to take deposits to only a bank. Mm-hmm. So you can, only a bank can take deposits, and a lot of other services related to banking are only restrained to banks itself. There has been a relaxation in the regulation that what we call the prepaid semi-closed instruments guidelines, which are there, which basically allow third-party operators to essentially issue instruments that will allow you to send money, pay bills, those kind of things. And that's evolving. So there's a lot of support coming from the regulator to say that let's grow this market and all that stuff. But it's going to be gradual. I think the proof is going to be in terms of a couple of successful launches. We ourselves have done a launch in Rajasthan jointly in partnership with a private sector bank. And the proof is there. I mean, so that's what we are scaling across. So I think it's going to take some time, partly because of the regulation. Secondly, the Indian customer is already spoiled for choice. I mean, if you look at the remote areas, they have so many other non-traditional means of sending money. So you have the Angadia and the local ecosystem, where people used to send money via people who are going back to the village. Then you also have the post office system, so the money transfer that happens through post office. So there are so many options for getting money from one place to the other. So the proposition that was in Africa was money transfer. That might not directly apply to India. In India, it may be around payments, it may be around savings, it may be around interest. So one of the learnings that we got was customers really liked the idea that they were earning interest on money that they were keeping in these accounts, because they are not traditionally used to being paid interest on all of this stuff. So those are the things that will actually drive adoption in India, and that's where the partnership model between a bank and operator, partnership model between a bank and a private sector is going to be critical.
Okay. So, yeah. Okay.
I think, all the constraint of time, whatever, but I think the whole discussion is basically happening around payments. And I think we need to get out of this mindset. The financial inclusion is more than just payments, right? I mean, we talked about subsidy, we can talk about all the other instruments that happen around insurance, pension, etc., which are also part of financial inclusion. And a couple of interesting ideas, probably there was an article, if you want to read, in Times of India, day before yesterday, from a person who is part of the CMAI, Mobile Commerce Group is represented. So he's talking about how the government can actually use mobile airtime. So, mobile as a technology offers something very unique. Lots of things it offers unique, right? I mean, there's a uniqueness in terms of number, there's a tracking, lots of other things. But something which is very unique to it is the airtime, which is the alternate currency in which you can trade. And all the story around Kenya, Africa, etc., that was talked about is in terms of this currency. And the good thing about the currency is, at least Baba Ramdev cannot, talk otherwise in terms of, where the money is, etc., So he talks about this subsidy, which is given on kerosene, food, fertilizer, okay? And har haath mein ek mobile, whatever the campaign was, it's talking about 700 million people, and he, to be given phones. And he divides this money and says that, it's about 1,500 rupees of air talk time that can be done for these below poverty line subscribers. BSNL can actually run a special series so they're identified, okay? And this money can be actually transferred to them as airtime. Now, whether you encash it like cash or whether you encash it like a kind is something that, we can think about a model. But then, I really talked about the forgotten man, right? This money goes to the right person, right people, in the right way. Of course, people will find different ways to be able to do that. So that's one kind of creative innovation solution that we're talking about. I was in another conference in Bangalore last month where the essence of the inclusive growth was around mobile data capture. And what is happening down at the bottom of this hierarchy is, for example, they talked about the NGRE scheme where they pay money for laborers to dig certain size of the pit or, make the road, okay? And as part of the mobile data capture, they've developed applications where every day they take a photograph, the video doesn't need to travel from all the way to the city, etc., and then this work is done and the photograph is uploaded and the money is transferred as part of the encashment. There's another company that was a very interesting product that they basically had, which was about microcredit profile development. So what they basically do is this very low class, the maids and other people who do not have bank accounts, etc., are being asked every day to show the evidence on the payments or the expense and the income, okay? Because these are daily wages, okay? And based on this, the profile of this person is built over a period of time, and then they actually get a credit rating after 6 months if they're consistent. And now they've tied up with a bank, and now with this microcredit policy, they've become a user for an account opening, etc., So the enablement of this financial inclusion is just more than the payments. And we just need to come out with the creative solutions and ideas using the immense technology and all the ecosystem that exists around us.
All right. Okay, so I think I've got one question, Mr. Deshmukh, and I know that you've got real good knowledge on economics and you love that topic. We've actually, in the last 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, if you understood the product is important. I think all the panelists really believe that this has to be there. Why? I mean, apart from the consumer, how does the whole financial inclusion help the entire economy? I think that's something that, from a macro level, I would like to understand. I mean, okay, we want the farmer to be mobile, we want the farmer to have a bank account. He's been living his life comfortably, whichever manner he's been living. What will it do to the overall economy?
See, what happens in the electronic payment when you do through mobile, it establishes, first of all, an audit trail. It can also capture the data, what he mentioned, in terms of consumption. So the FMCG companies, the government subsidy, commodity movement, they know exactly what has been consumed, how much cash has moved to a person. the tax recovery so far as service tax or VAT is concerned is assured in the process because there is an intermediary who can monitor and deduct the tax at source. So suppose you buy something for 1,000 rupees and the service tax of 12 rupees, 15 rupees, 20 rupees is payable on that, then the settlement agency, which could be Vodafone, which could be a bank, will automatically transfer only the net of tax amount to the seller. So the recovery of money is there. The debtor velocity becomes the fastest. There is no credit period given to anyone at all. The money moves at the same time into the pockets or the value chain where it is supposed to go. So if the money moves faster instead of sitting idly back in the home, and it enables the fulfillment of impulse on the spot, because you go to a shop and you don't have cash with you, you don't have a credit card in a village, then you don't go back again to the shop because you have come to a district place or a taluka place once in a week. But if you have a mobile in a wallet, then you can do your shopping on the spot there itself. So when goods move faster, when the GDP is improved and the tax collection is enhanced, then the tax rate goes down, so economy benefits. The merchant discount rate, which is a killing factor, in many cases the consumer has to pay the MDR, particularly when he goes to a chemist or goes for a medical treatment or some places where the seller has very thin margins. If that merchant discount rate disappears and gets replaced by a small transaction fee, then the benefit of cost and increased sale goes and percolates to all the people.
I would just like to,
sure.
Sorry to intervene. On two counts, I would like to rebut. One is that mobile banking does exist today. I think Mr. Parmar will agree with me. There are 15 nationalized bank and private sector banks who have already introduced the service more than a year back, but the takeoff is very, very less than 1%. It is insignificant. And second Q, I will just say, I'll talk for Sanjay that in this financial inclusion, of course, it is beyond banking. And that is already happening. I'm sorry to throw some numbers because numbers will make the perspective again right.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Government has already disbursed more than 87 million Kisan credit cards, which are linked to the banks, and already more than 4,300 crores of rupees has been disbursed by them, wherein the monthly credit limit is about 50,000 rupees, and 10% of that credit limit you can utilize for your non-agricultural activities.
Okay.
So it is already happening.
Yes, I think obviously it's great that we have a whole insight into the way, I think the government is really pushing it hard, and with this whole credit cards and Kisan Vikas Padhati and all these things, obviously it's growing up. I think one point that I wanted to probably throw to Sanjay and to Chintan is, in terms of the technology, Chintan, we've always had this debate, obviously, is it vis-a-vis, do I need to run on a banking model, do I need to run on a telecom model? Whereas obviously we can debate it to hell, but the fact is that in India we will always be running it on a banking platform. I don't think, because if you want to recreate the whole piece, I think we're going to go back to probably the next generation to be able to create that. So having said that, if we have to really live on the banking platform, which I don't think is a debate anymore, I mean, that's a given. That's a given. What technology do you further want in this whole space to be able to make it popular?
I think from my perspective, technology and regulation go hand in hand. The reason mobile banking hasn't picked up is you can download an application on your phone and do mobile banking, but what does mobile banking mean? Check your account, ask for a checkbook. Can you do a transfer from one account to another? No, you cannot. Right? Why? Because you need a unique password to be put when you have account-to-account transfer. And that is mandate. So 2 years back, when we wanted to establish this entire model, ICICI was the only bank which allowed ICICI account transfer to another ICICI account transfer through SMS, which didn't work most of the times.
Okay, so I think, no, but I think this
yes, technology does, you absolutely need technology, but if you have a regulation where if you want to do a credit card transaction on the net, right, you still need Visa Pay or 3D Visa
3D
Master Pay password, right? How would you include that on your mobile?
Okay, so that's a very interesting topic, and I don't want to delve into too much from a security perspective, but probably I'm going to get Mr. Parmaran to figure out, I thought the biggest reasons why people are really hesitant to get into net banking or through other things is because of the fear of security, because you're dealing with people's cash. And here we have a intellect consumer who says that because you asked me to put in 5 passwords, I'm not interested. So how do you balance it between the requirements of the customer, the security aspect, And while net banking is a very different phenomenon, but when you actually get into financial inclusion, you're actually giving the operators, the telecom operators, to actually handle an individual's cash, which is a far more question of responsibility. And we talked about the KYC norms, etc. So how do you balance between the security that a customer thinks about and absolutely the laziness to remember a password and absolutely the difficulty in remembering passwords? So how do you balance the two?
See, as far as security aspect is concerned, even in our mobile banking scheme, we have two factors that is authentication is through MPIN system, and second is the mobile handset. These two things are with the customers only, and unless they part away with the others, I don't think this can be misused by anyone else. So ultimately, it remains with the account holder, the customer. If they don't maintain the secrecy of the MPIN, or they hand it over their handset to someone else with the MPIN, definitely there is going to be a misuse. This is the primarily responsibility, just like an account holder, just like the ATM debit card. See, we come across many such instances where even the family members, the son or daughter, maybe knowing the password, they take the ATM card, go withdraw the money, and then a complaint will come, sir, there is a fraud in our account. So this type of things do happen. It cannot be ruled out, but at the same time, the maintenance of the secrecy of all this is very essential. And
yes, sir, but the problem is when the government banks do it, they don't get levied a penalty. But I know that, Vicky's smiling away, but I know the amount of penalties that Vodafone pays on KYC misusage, which runs into crores of rupees. So I don't know how it works out as a balancing
No, I
act.
think rightly, even one of the panel members said rightly, the banking, when we were discussing, the banking channel is also used for the money laundering. It is not ruled out. It is used through proper channel. So sometimes we may fall prey of such gimmicks also, and we may have to pay a heavy price for it. We cannot rule out those possibilities. Like that, even technology also, it is misused. See, we have ideally in our own system, suppose we as an employee, password secrecy is not possible when we work in a branch, because for any work, even as suppose when I was working in a branch as in charge, I used to share my password with my colleagues, because all the time I cannot be available on my seat. So naturally, with the mutual trust, confidence, we have to do it.
No, I think.
But then I had to counter check it.
No, I think that's a very honest confession of sharing passwords.
May I add something here?
And especially in the banking space, so we all know where we're heading with a honest confession that the passwords on the banking side are even shared, where we thought it was like, Mr. Deshmukh, so I think, anyway, I'm not going to delve into password sharing in the banking sector. Very touchy topic, I don't want to get into it. Mr. Deshmukh, from a customer perspective, what is the fear in the minds of the customer before getting into financial inclusion, or for that matter, mobile banking? What are some of the 4-5 things largely, which forget a rural customer, as an intellect customer, what are the 3-4 things in the urban areas which a customer feels? And obviously there are challenges. Probably I believe that that probably a rural customer does not have those challenges in his mind because he is actually not even so educated. But I think what are the 4-5 challenges that you believe an urban customer has?
See, as far as the urban customer is concerned, he is going to park his money into a mobile wallet. So he's afraid that the details of the mobile wallet, he will never get a printed statement. He won't have the track of all the transactions happening there.
Okay.
One fine day, he will wake up in the morning to know that his balance has gone down, and he'll have to run around to get the track of transaction. Doesn't know what happens when he dies, whether he can leave his mobile, one mobile for the wife and the other mobile for the son, and they operate the mobile wallet.
With the limits right now, I don't think he'll be bothered with that.
The secretary also shares the mobile, so she might be using the money there.
Sir, I can just interfere because I think there is no nomination facility also.
There's no nomination facility on the mobile. And as I mentioned that these...
All right. So I think a customer is more scared about the 10,000 rupees that he's going to leave when he dies, so he actually doesn't get into mobile.
I just want to go back and address the technology issue, which was very interesting discussion.
Sure.
I think what can be done is, there is a concern on the side of the customer, on the side of the banker, on the side of the merchant. Now, if we can separate the micro payments and say up to 200 rupees, 500 rupees is not a debatable payment, there can be a cooling period. Even in a credit card transaction, the credit card companies do go and get into reversal of transactions. So you have merchants, or you identify locations where you don't expect a fraud on part of the merchant to accept this card, like your toll payment. and you say that 24 hours is a cooling period in which the mobile company or the wallet company will send a SMS, and unless a negative confirmation comes, it will release the payment. If you put a cooling period of 1 hour, 8 hours, 24 hours, then the question about security of money, compromising of password or such things will disappear. And when you reduce the password size, the problem that people face today is an 8-digit password, IMPS code and all those things which you keep on remembering. And as a customer, I don't know where I'm sending money, whether that person's SIM is still valid or not valid. So when these questions and what is the validity period of that SMS, and sometimes there is a ban on SMS in view of the communal situation, in view of some tragedies or some problems that come and the mobile companies itself don't function, then what happens to the validity of the SMS? Where does my transaction go and lie in the cyberspace? So if these issues are addressed, then probably system will fly faster.
So I hope the man sitting on your left is able to address some of those issues, right, Vicky?
Just want to talk about here, in terms of what the message I think that is going around in terms of the impact it basically creates. So a lot of economic studies have been done around the mobile penetration versus correlation to GDP. And one such resource report talks about the impact of the penetration, which is, let's say, about 10% in the States. The contribution is about 1.23 or 25% to the GDP.
Right.
And it also talks about where the penetration was about more than 25%, mobile phone penetration, the GDP almost doubles to about 2 point something. And then, and this is what, in terms of all the obstacles, impediments that we talked about. And again, mobile is about communication, mobility, reach for that common man. Go back to the days where, the sabji wala or et cetera, guy used to come to you and then ask for the order. And today, when, he can just send an SMS and probably be available to you. So I think all those components also are, part and parcel of the GDP contribution, the penetration, the financial inclusion in terms of his growth opportunities that basically exist for that common man. Okay, and therefore I think is a big enablement across all the opportunities that exist at the bottom of the pyramid.
Okay, yeah, sure.
To add one more point, that in today's mobile banking, in fact, you can do account transfer of some amount from one account to other through two verification systems. One is your account verification system, and second is your M-banking PIN. That is, I think, 5-digit PIN. But still it is not happening. So I was just talking to one of the bankers why it was not happening, even in urban sector. Then he said, there are two reasons, specifically. First, today, the bankers are not interested to facilitate this channel because there are so many other channels existing. In the sense that I'm not saying that they're against it, but they are so busy with the other channels and the amount of transaction through other channels, and most of them are also today electronic. You have this, some kind of transaction which happens through, I think, MITR numbers and all. And second reason is that on an average, the urban customer will be having a much bigger amount in his kitty. So he's afraid. As Sanjay said, that if some mistake happens, then what do I go? And this, from IT perspective, these laws are very, very tricky. There's a lot of difference between the physical being and the digital world.
So I think Vicky, from a Vodafone perspective,
Sir,
yeah, sure. Sorry.
When he talked about the facilities, see, I have in our facility, mobile banking, balance inquiry, mini statement, intra-bank fund transfer, interbank fund transfer through IMPS, feedback and MPIN change. These are all available. But I don't know, as he rightly said, the percentage of usage by the customers is perhaps the lowest.
Yeah, so I don't
understand why it is happening.
Yeah, so
perhaps...
I think, sir, we talked about it, the whole piece that, obviously awareness is...
Sir, just
sure,
permit
go
me.
ahead.
See, technology has revolutionized the banking because a few years back, let us talk about prior to 2005 or 2006, there was no CBS platform available in the Indian banking industry. Only private banks who came, rather who were born with the technology, they only had that privilege. See, the Indian banking, rather I'll call it the PSBs, public sector banks, they started migrating their accounts to the CBS platform. And today, see, as rightly pointed out, the migrant laborers who have to remit the money to their native places, see, today they find it very, very convenient. Here they deposit, their native place account is credited. This facility was not earlier available. Perhaps because of this advanced technology available, the usage of mobile may be perhaps the lowest. That is what I personally believe. This is my personal perception. Second thing is, see, through mobile they confirm also. They will talk to their native place, find out whether you have got the money. Because people are waiting there. Once the account is credited, they withdraw the cash also. So there is both the technology are simultaneously being used by the people. And the rural masses, wherever we go, definitely the mobile technology is in use at large. Only thing, it is to be used for the banking facility.
Right. So I think one question that I had, and I'm open for the poll, and I'm open to the audience to answer, or for area matters, there's a question from the audience. I think the other piece that we've seen from a vast perspective, and that I've seen, was a whole issue around the content and the language. Now, we're dealing with a large country which has got different channels, different spheres, different kind of people, you know, one system being an agricultural, the other being a very industrialized economy. How do you balance between the two? Do we think operators and the bankers or anybody or the technology providers, are we doing enough to meet the content, the language, you know, and you rightly mentioned, it is just not about payment transfers. There's a whole lot of other things that are happening, whether it's the insurance, whether it's the pension funds, whether it's anything else. How do you make sure that happens, that you've got enough content on the table to be able to make the customer educated enough, awareness? You know, apart from English, if you send me something in Tamil, I don't understand. The same is, and vice versa with the customer in the rural area. You're trying to develop everything in English, trying to develop everything for the urban subscriber. So have you really thought about the consumer down there?
So I'll answer that. So from a technology perspective, languages or the IVR, which is in local languages. Today that is pretty much widely adopted. So getting the message across to the customer in a language that he understands is not really an issue today. I think when it comes to our customer service functions and all of that, we've already incorporated that in all our touch points with customers itself. So language is definitely being taken care of, but beyond the language, there's the financial literacy part of it, where the customer understands what is happening today. And to give you a classic example, where today when it comes to doing a recharge, it's almost like a cash deposit. I go and give the gentleman and the agent $100 and I tell him, please recharge my account. He's basically converting that 100 rupees into 100 rupees of talk time for me and then giving it to me. So today, if you look at the way the retail channel that is being trained and the way we roll it out, a lot of it is kind of driven by the agent itself. He will do it. He will ask the customer to enter his mobile number, and that's where the transaction completes. So that's the part that needs to be extended into this space. And I was. So here from the bank was saying the right thing, that today CBS is pretty much spread all over the country. Sure. So people understand the fact that I can put money here and somebody else can deposit. So that fixes the technology aspect. But then the second aspect, which we've not spoken about, is the distribution. Today that has resulted in people standing in long queues outside banks to deposit money into these accounts that can be cashed out over there. And the regulation, as the RBI has put us today, is that if you want to open a BC, you need to be within 30 kilometers of a bank. So what do you do in those areas where there's no bank branch? So that's another challenge which today people in the private sector, whether it's a mobile operator or even an FMCG, can actually fix, because they've been able to get their products right down to the lowest level and at the last mile. So not just, we spent a lot of time talking about technology, probably didn't do justice to the fact that the second aspect is distribution and reach, which will also make this a kind of viable proposition.
No, I think clearly, I think obviously that's a very real input in terms of distribution and reach. So Chintan, where do you think we're heading in terms of distribution? Because if you look at the fact that we have Kirana stores right at the end of the village, we've got a reach, when it comes to selling a cigarette or a BD, we're there. So why can't we just get this piece through this? Which clearly means that if you look at some of the FMCG companies like an ITC or a Hindustan Lever, they have the reach. So why are we only looking at a scheme of things where we have a telecom operator, we have a technology guy, we've got the banker. When we have a reach right till the rural India. So why are we not utilizing that space?
So, I mean, look at it this way. Somebody deposits money in Patna, received by somebody in Bombay. It's cash, right? So distribution is not of goods. That's the difference between FMCG company and what we're talking about. It's pure cash. So the question is, who takes that risk? Does the bank take the risk? No. Does the mobile operator take the risk? No. It's the Kirana store who will take the risk. Are they ready to take the risk is the question.
Yeah, I guess that's where a lot of the partnerships that will work out. For instance, today, if I'm a distributor of ITC, or if I'm a distributor of Vodafone or Airtel or whoever it is, I already have a business relationship with that guy where I'm probably extending him credit. I have a certain deposit with him. So I already have that channel set up. So it becomes just another SKU which I'm carrying on. Like I'm carrying biscuits, I'm carrying SIM cards, I'm carrying cold drinks. I'm now carrying e-money, technically, so to speak, and saying this is the e-money that I need to push through my system. Wherever somebody comes in, if he gives me cash, what are you really selling? You're selling e-money. So you're giving him e-money in return in his account. So if you think of it that way, that's where the distribution will play a part, and then you'll be able to actually do that.
So I think currently what basically is a scenario, and I think probably we need to learn from places like Philippines, Indonesia. I have a personal experience because we deployed a lot of systems around that APAC region. Is that the barter system, right? I mean, this is the Asian old barter system that basically takes place. So if the son of this old mother works in the city, right, and he transfers the money, he just goes to the chicken shop and exchanges that airtime money with the chicken that she buys. And there's a whole ecosystem that has been created around those business models, the B2C, the B2B part, which is essential for this commodity because it's not physical money, so money moves in a way. And of course, there are endpoints where the airtime can be encashed in a form that it can probably move. But the conflict in terms of the evolvement of the system, there was no banking in Kenya and other places, and therefore this was more successful. And here we have already so many club web, landscaped, defined systems that there's a need to be a creative way to break those shackles and to have a synergistic view in terms of giving the benefit. I talk about it again, the forgotten man.
All right. Okay, so Mr. Parmar, what is your view in terms of who takes the risk and your last comment in terms of who needs to do what more to make this a success?
Well, bankers, they do have their customers, so definitely they own the customers, they own the responsibility, and the risk also, they will own it. See, the earlier cost of the fund transfer was very high. We talked 25 rupees for RTGS or NEFT. Today it is 5 rupees. So like that, definitely, as I said in my earlier remarks, we don't pass on cost for mobile banking, and we shall abide by it.
Sure. So I think obviously that's a debate as to who owns the customer. So I could see both the heads nodding whether the customer is owned by the banker or the customer is owned by the operator. So I think that's obviously a debate till the regulator steps in. So I think...
One more thing, because when Deshmukh sir was telling, see, there is no set rules or any laid down procedures for settling the unclaimed amount lying there. Whereas we do have set rules and laid down procedures how to make a death claim settlement. So there is absolutely no problem for that also.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the operators need to learn from the bankers in terms of the death claims. Vicky, I'm going to talk to you over the flight now. So Mr. Deshmukh, your last comments as to what are the two things that you would want the regulators or the operators or the technology providers or the banks or whoever in the ecosystem is, two things where you want a strong impetus from the government on that?
I think the government should not think that anybody is qualified just because he holds one license to do business. If there are 40 crore bank accounts today, everybody doesn't sign a check every day, so there are not 40 crore transactions happening in the banking sector. If 80 crore mobiles are doing 2 transactions, it means 160 crore transactions a day. So obviously they have to understand the volume handling capacity. It's not a risk of money, it's the ability to service. If banks are closed on Sundays, if banks go on strike for 2 or 3 days in a year, it collapses. The whole system will not work. So government has to do is to decouple the risk. Carrying cash itself is a bigger risk. The biggest risk is in cash. So converting cash into electronic and putting the audit trail and opening up the business to take it out of the core banking and put it maybe on a cloud platform where it is decoupled from the telecom player, is decoupled from the bank, and it is handled by somebody who has got the credentials, credibility, and audit management from the banking and the regulator side. If this is done, then probably this business will fly much faster than what it is doing
amazing
now.
insight. So go away the operators, go away the banks. We're going to get a third party to handle it. Vicky, your comments on it?
So I'll be a little bit more opportunistic, or rather more positive, not opportunistic, but more positive about the whole thing. I think in the last 4.5, 5 years, I've seen the regulator and the government being more and more open. It's like almost like they're opening the gates slowly, and letting more and more innovation come in the space. So I would say that, we are probably 60% there in terms of regulation. I think it's now up to private players and banks to open up and take risk and trust each other and get this thing done. It's happening in some parts. I mean, a lot of you have seen the campaigns by one of our competitors around the whole money transfer as well as payments of goods and services. So it's inevitable. It's not that it's not, whether we like it or not, whether operators can sit back and say, we will do it, banks can sit back and say, we'll do it. It's going to like it because customers will want it. So I think it's only a matter of time. I mean, what the government is doing is gradually getting its own act in place. I think India is the only country, you may not know this, but India is the only country that has got an interoperability guideline for mobile wallets. I mean, forget about the fact that we don't have mobile wallets and we don't have a huge penetration. The government has already come up, or other regulators has already come and said how these two systems should talk to each other, and they've put interoperability guidelines, which shows that, thinking is there. NPCI and whatever is happening over there is very, very interesting. So the steps are being taken over there. So I'll say it's...
Yeah, but it's only on paper today, right? Interoperability on the M-wallet. All right. Now we're going to get Sanjay. Sanjay, 30 seconds.
I think it's like the movie, right? I mean, you get into the part where there are difficult things and to find out and things like that. I think the story of the mobile, and I think just going back again, connecting to the operator part, or whether the India growth story that Professor Patil talked in his last address, or this year's address, is I think really not about driven through the government. It's a business opportunity that exists, and it flows through. I mean, in terms of the inclusiveness and the need for the human being to be able to grow, survive, communicate. Those are the basic instincts. I mean, if today Manoj was to make his movie again, Roti Kapda Makan, probably he'll rename it to Roti Kapda Makan and Mobile, because that's the penetration and the inclusiveness that it basically brings to a common person.
No, I think we've definitely grown a long way. Debashish, your last comment.
Again, very interesting statistics. I think government also understands this, and therefore, earlier, the limit for per day transaction was 5,000 rupees a day. RBI has already increased it to 50,000 rupees a day. It's a very, very positive note.
All right, Chintan, apart from the Filipino maid you want earlier or the smart cash you want earlier, what are the two things that you would want finally the government to really put pressure on, or the operators, to make sure that it happens in the next 5 to 10 years?
Filipino maids in India, of course, not a possibility. But I think even if the government, banks, operators put together can maybe do a very controlled pilot in an area where this entire thing that we're talking about seems feasible, and come out with a business model which is scalable, I think, and which I think Vodafone is already doing in Rajasthan. A couple of these pilots would actually start the entire process very quickly.
All right. So I think we've had a good debate in the last 1 hour. We touched upon, I think, a couple of things that I carry back home from this. One is definitely that I think there's a need for a lot of awareness amongst both the urban and the rural class, because there is a lot of products that are available. There is a lot of technology that's available. So I think awareness, one thing. And, Debashish has clearly mentioned that the local ecosystem definitely exists. There's a large part. Ability to take the risk. Who wants to take the risk? I think something, and obviously, KYC, yes, who owns the customer. So I think that's very important. And I think someday the government will come out with a guideline as to who owns the customer, the bank or the operator. So I think now we'll open it to the audience. I know it's like really late in the day, 4:40 in the evening. So quick, I think we'll just have 5-10 minutes. If there's any questions, I'm okay for the panel to come. Yeah, so we've got 3 minutes to go. Yeah.
My name is Arun Thomas. I am from second year Systems and Finance, SITM. My question is towards financial inclusion. That is, like we are all aware about the various business models that is used in MFS, like MNO-led model, bank-led model, or a hybrid model. And we are also aware about the various opportunities that is available to both banks and telcos. Like as in they can acquire a new customer segment, they have lots of opportunities. And even if you look at the success stories of M-Pesa in Kenya, they have done a pretty good job there. But if you look at Kenya as a country, still the financial penetration is just 10%. And what they facilitated was mobile payments. So my question, coming to the question, like if you want to achieve the financial inclusion in a faster mode, which is the best model? As in, is it through a MNO-led model or a bank model or through a hybrid-led model?
Okay. So M-wallet versus banking model versus hybrid model. Anybody wants to go in? Okay, so basically what he's arguing, which is the best model for a faster penetration into the market? Should I go the M-wallet way? Okay, yeah.
So I think in India what will work is the hybrid model. It can't be one or the other. Seeing it evolve for so many years, I don't think anybody can say that it will be only a bank-led model or only an operator-led model. It will have to be a hybrid model. And so
yeah,
we'll converge.
I fully agree, endorse. Let us not compare with the other countries. Let us look at our own country. Let us see our own requirement, opportunities prevalent in the rural market, and definitely take a decision that definitely one single thing cannot operate anywhere. I endorse there has to be a hybrid system.
All right. So I think we've got time for just one last question, if there's anything else, and then we're going to wrap up for the day. Yeah, can we have a mic here, please? I think we've got yeah, okay, we've got there, right.
I think the gentleman here wanted
to. You also wanted to ask? Oh, no, I think we're running
short of time. Hello. Yeah, good evening, panel members. My name is Giri. I'm a faculty here with SITM. Partnership between Airtel and SBI, they just, it fell apart. But it was a wonderful combination, the biggest operator and the biggest bank in the country. What do you think must be the reasons of this kind of a partnership to fall through? Because the combination would have made a deadly, as you're saying, hybrid model. What do you think are the key reasons why operators and banks are not coming and negotiating the terms? Is it revenue share? Do the banks don't want to give a per transaction fee? What is it?
Sir, see, banks also cannot open branches at every place. Perhaps you might have heard recently the finance secretary had issued a guideline that the branches, if they are not profit making within the first year of their operation, they need to be closed. We cannot afford to close the branches, whether they are profit making or non-profit making, because see, we also simultaneously have a social banking responsibility on our Indian banking system. So, see, banks have started two models. One is the BC model, that is through business correspondent we do it. And another is the USB, ultra small branches. And with these two, we are penetrating in the even remotest rural also. And wherever possible, through mobile also, urban or semi-urban areas, through mobile banking, we can approach it. So that's why we said a hybrid. And definitely, dependent on the various circumstances, dependent on the requirement of this area, we can go like this.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, dear panelists, for such an enlightening and invigorating session. I now invite my colleagues to felicitate our esteemed dignitaries with mementos as a token of our gratitude and appreciation. We thank our panel members to have joined us and would now request them to kindly take their seats amongst the audience. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right.